You've heard it before, the classic question following victories, major achievements, and the Super Bowl. What will you do next?
We're going to Disney World.
But how do you get there? What does it typically cost? And is it really a once-in-a-lifetime trip that is growing out of reach for many families? Keep listening for a budget breakdown of a typical family trip to Disney World with tips and tricks on how to make your vacation work for your budget.
Welcome to the Travel More podcast.
Each episode, we share custom itineraries, travel hacks, expert advice, and even stories of our past travel failures to help you level up your travel game.
I'm Shelly, a lover of plans, itineraries, and cheap flights. I'm an expert deal finder with one eye always on the budget.
And I'm Bruce, the improviser, ready to pick up where plans fail to turn letdowns into unexpected trip favorites. We're here to bust through barriers that stop you from making your travel dreams a reality.
So book that flight, buy the tickets, and say hello to your next adventure.
This is the Travel More Podcast. Welcome back to the Travel More Podcast. Today in our 6th episode, we are so excited to share that we've hit 1,000 downloads since launching the podcast in January.
And to celebrate, we are offering our listeners a chance to win a 1-year premium subscription to Going, formerly Scotch Cheap Flights. To enter, check out our show notes.
And we're so excited to continue to bring you some awesome content, including today, which is an exciting one.
Yeah.
Today we're talking about Disney
World!
The most magical place on earth.
Yes. You know, there's something about a Disney World vacation. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but man, when the bug gets you, it gets you.
Seriously, though, because, I wasn't always a big Disney person.
Yeah, me neither.
And I had, I went as a kid, but I barely remembered it.
Yeah, I didn't even have the kid nostalgia factor because I didn't go until I was a senior in high school with like a show choir trip. So
right,
I was like an adult, essentially.
When I thought about Disney before I started going as an adult, to me, I guess I thought I would go when I had kids, and maybe it was a place to go with kids.
You're like once in a lifetime.
Right, like, I've went, and maybe I'll go again, but it's not a place that you might return to.
Yeah,
but man, until we went, and when Shelly and I were living in Florida, we had the chance to go quite a bit.
Yeah.
And we went kind of on a whim because I had leftover paper tickets, which
1998
is they don't do this anymore.
No.
But very excited that I had these old tickets. And we weren't sure if they'd be accepted, and we went to Animal Kingdom because that was the first park we went to on opening day when I was a kid. And the tickets had 10, 12 days.
It was crazy.
Extra. It was wild.
It was a wild amount.
We were able to do that, and we really fell in love. And what I found out about Disney is that there's so much more to offer than just what you might think of as like a kid's experience with characters in Magic Kingdom.
Yeah, truth be told, the character stuff isn't really our vibe. People love it. That's great, but it's just not like our thing. We're theater people, so we love a good show, and they have plenty of those as well. But we just like... It's very easy for us. Everything's kind of in one spot. You don't have to do a lot of research into what's good.
And
Everything's
planning.
good.
Right.
So it doesn't matter really what you pick. And it's different than planning a trip to London where you're like, oh God, I have to find every nook and cranny and really look for these kind of hidden gems. And in Disney, nothing's hidden, so
right.
It's a lot easier. Everything's just kind of there for you.
And it's one of those things where it takes the stress of worrying about when you're exploring a new city, is this a good place that we're going to stay? Is this worth the money to go eat here? Are we missing out on something?
Right, is it a good neighborhood? It's it's all fine at Disney.
Yeah.
It's
so
just easy.
Going on Disney vacations for us has been really fun. It's a relaxing time. I would put it up there. It's the same reason I think people like cruising or going to all-inclusives.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that is... It's just relaxing.
Yeah, which is funny. I know people are going to be like, oh, hot take, relaxing Disney vacation. But actually, once you've been, maybe even just one time, the second time, it is relaxing because you know what to expect. You don't have to worry about it. It's just there for you.
And that's a good point, Shelly, because, we do own our own travel agency, so we do help people kind of book and figure out Disney vacations. And I think it can be a lot for your first time.
Yes.
Which is why today we wanted to talk and break down the beginnings of what we have to look at, which goes against our usual philosophy of finding, your destination, letting it come to you.
Right, doing your budget first, then destination. This one is kind of the opposite. You have your eyes set on Disney World, and it is what it is. There's not really a time when that destination is going to come to you as the cheapest option. So you have to build your budget around this particular destination.
Right, and that's a question we get asked a lot. How much does it really cost to go to Disney World? I hear people say all kinds of things, from thinking it's way cheaper than it actually is to thinking it's way out of of reach and they could never afford it.
Yeah, and really it's somewhere in the middle. So let's talk about first kind of a quick overview of like what costs money in Disney World, which the answer to that is everything. But we're going to talk about the categories of things. So when we talk about them later.
Well, there's one thing that doesn't cost money. It's water.
Water! I already knew you were going to say
As long as you don't buy Dasani water bottles, you can go to any quick service and get free water.
Apparently this is our episode of in unison exclamations. But we are going to talk about the categories of what cost money at Disney. So that way when we talk about it later, it kind of makes more sense and we don't have to say it all at once because it can feel overwhelming.
Right. So we want to give you kind of a benchmark to think about what are you paying for? What are the categories?
Yeah. And why would you pay for this versus that? So first, accommodation categories include value, moderate, and deluxe. That's kind of the three basic categories in accommodations. And dining goes quick service, table service, and signature dining. And if you're looking for characters, that would be in the signature dining category. So when we talk about that, that's where character dining goes.
So why don't we talk about accommodations first?
Yeah.
One big thing we want to talk about, all of Disney property hotels and resorts, they're all going to share something. So they're all going to have pools. They're heated pools. Mm-hmm. They all have quick service dining.
Yeah,
right?
so there's always food and pools. That's
Yes.
another thing I always get asked from families. Is there a pool? Is there a place to get food? Yes is the answer to literally every Disney resort.
And when we think about these categories, we're really going to build up from there.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the higher the category, the higher the tier, the more amenities on the property.
Yeah.
It's a big thing to think about.
Absolutely. So value is our most basic room. It's going to be usually the cheapest cost. They're going to just have quick service food options. So there's not any like sit down restaurants, but there's plenty of grab and go and then like cafeteria style. And the rooms are motel style. So it's kind of like you go to your room, the door's on the outside. And there's courtyards and things like that. And then there's one main building that has all of the amenities in it.
Right, like inside that building, you're going to find that cafeteria. You're going to find kind of a convenience store with souvenirs and stuff.
Yeah, I believe every single one also has an arcade. I've never
usually,
used an
I would
arcade,
say-
but it's there always.
Yeah, there's fun stuff at all the resorts.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's an arcade, and they almost all of them have movies they show sometimes.
All of them. That's actually one of them we should have put in the beginning. They do always have this like movie on the
night.
green
Yep.
kind of thing. So that's also fun if you aren't going to a park and you had like a pool day. Nice thing to do in the afternoon.
And it's one of the things I think when we look at all the Disney accommodations, just because it's called value doesn't mean it's like bare bones.
No, you're
coming
still getting a
into-
lot, you know.
There's theming, there's all these options. It just kind of goes up from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next step is the moderate, which honestly, this is our favorite kind of tier
Category.
of
Some
of
of our
accommodations.
favorites, like my favorite's Coronado Springs.
My favorite is Coronado right now. I'm really excited for Port Orleans this summer, so
Yes.
fingers crossed on that one because I have high hopes for that one. But I love Coronado Springs. So these the theming is usually more adult. So in all of the ones, at least all the ones I can think off the top of my head, every single one of them is a more adult theme. So Coronado Springs, for example, is kind of like the American Southwest.
Yeah, it's like a mix of Spain and El Dorado, kind of these ideas of, and the Southwest.
Yeah.
It's a mashup of stuff for sure.
And then Port Orleans or New Orleans.
New Orleans.
So things like that. They're a little more adult, and they do all include like lounges, kind of like bar lounges.
There's more, not necessarily nightlife, but like bars and restaurants and sit down. So something to do that's not just family oriented.
Yeah, and there is, he just mentioned it, but pretty quickly, table services. So that's our sit-down restaurants. There are also table services at these resorts. So they have both options, a quick service where you can get cafeteria style and the table service where you can have a full sit-down, waiter type meal. And then finally, we have our deluxe category, which Bruce and I have never stayed in a deluxe, but that's changing this summer. We're very excited. We've visited plenty
I was
of
going to
them.
say, one thing you can definitely do is, now, sometimes it's tricky because you can't necessarily park.
Yeah.
There's still ways to go to them. Because the thing about the deluxe is that they're going to have all these things that the moderate and value have, but then there's even additional type of perks and features, kind of like the Polynesian has Trader Sam's. Which is a really cool immersive
I think
bar.
what you were just about to say is you can resort hop.
You can resort hop,
Yeah.
right? So you don't have to stay at these places to go visit and experience them.
You cannot pool hop. So I don't want to.
No.
I don't want to tell you
Don't.
accidentally wrong there. You cannot pool hop. You have to stay in the pool that you have.
Right.
But you can resort hop. So if like you're at Magic Kingdom, you want to take a break in the middle of the day. It's very easy to get to any of the monorail resorts. It would be like the Polynesian, Contemporary, Grand Floridian, and go to their bars or go to a restaurant in there. Chef Mickey's is in Contemporary, really famous, really popular. character dining thing that people do. It's very easy to get to from Magic Kingdom. So there are definitely a lot of ways to get to these resorts. And honestly, even if you don't stay at a deluxe, they're worth the visit. They're 100%. Beautiful.
And you can make a reservation at the restaurants too.
Yeah, and if you have a reservation, you can park.
Yes, that was one of the things I was going to bring up.
Yeah. So the deluxe, like we just said, they're going to have all those things that all the other ones had, but even more. So these are where you're going to find your signature dining locations and character dining, like I just mentioned for Chef Mickey's. And you're going to find even more of these like very cool extras, like Animal Kingdom Lodge has the savannah.
Right. You can see all the animals, and you can get a view from your room of like you're looking on the African veldt.
Speaking of that amazing once-in-a-lifetime view from your Disney hotel room, there is one more category, and this actually is in the deluxe resort, although there is one of these at Coronado Springs too. So usually deluxe, although a couple moderates may have it, but it's called Club Level.
Club Level.
Yeah, and this is like if your money's weighing you down and you need a way to get rid of it, here's where it can go.
It's a big add-on.
It is a big add-on, but it is very cool. So this is these like the nicest of the rooms. So these are gonna be like your studios, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom type rooms. And then you have this additional club level, and that gives you a private concierge and also access to the lounge, which Bruce is a good way of explaining that.
I like to think of this as a much nicer airport lounge.
Yeah.
And that, what I'm trying to describe is it's not a place you're necessarily going and sitting down for your full meal or dinner or anything. Mm-hmm. But they've got like rotating options always available, including alcoholic beverages like beer and wine.
Yes.
So if you visit at different times of day, depending on the lounge, they might have like an afternoon tea. They might have evening, later night snacks, some, appetizers and things, stuff for the morning. But it's always available during, pretty broad hours.
Yeah, I just had a friend book the Polynesian. And Polynesian, it has a beach, and so they have this big windows in the club, like where this lounge is, and you can see the Magic Kingdom fireworks from that lounge. So like they may not go to Magic Kingdom every day, but they can still like sit in that lounge, have a glass of wine, and watch the fireworks. So it is pretty cool. So if you're looking at more of like a once in a lifetime or multi-generational trip, it may be worth the look.
I think it's worth the upgrade, because when I think of these resorts, I really think value is awesome for families and younger kids because they've got the outside spaces. It's more affordable, especially if you're maybe getting more than one room.
It's a younger theme.
It definitely has a younger vibe, a younger theme.
Yeah.
And then as you go up, I think it does add more like adult type options like spas or restaurants and bars. And then those deluxe, man, I think they're really special. Like you can definitely build a special kind of trip around them.
Yeah, I mean, and just to give you kind of an idea, so Bruce and I as a couple, we wouldn't hang out between like parks at a value resort.
Not for very long. We might dip in the pool, but it's not a place where we would spend a half day or a full day at the hotel.
But we would and do that at the moderate and deluxe resort. So like we absolutely would spend time there.
Okay, and beyond those 3 categories for the Disney property hotels, there is one other category for accommodations that's really important to mention. It's the Good Neighbor hotels, which are hotels in the Orlando area that meet Disney's standards. And they also have certain perks that all the other ones have. A big one is extra magic hours.
Yeah, it's 30 minutes before park opens, and it's at every park. And so you can kind of get in there before rope drop, which is the opening of the park, and you can really set yourself up to get some of those bigger rides done before anybody gets there.
Yeah, so if you're a get up and go kind of person and you're trying to put a lot in your day, definitely recommend getting to the parks early. And if you're not staying at a Good Neighbor or Disney property, you're not going to be able to get that.
Okay, and the 3, we already mentioned this before we were going to say, but the 3 types of dining there are. Quick service is our cafeteria style. Table service is your kind of themed, waiters comes to you, sit down restaurant.
Like what you'd imagine as a, regular restaurant.
Yeah. And then signature are these like very special events. They are the character dining, but they're also things like Victoria and Albert's, which is like a $500 per person type meal. But it's also, very fine premium.
We're talking
dining.
like Michelin star standard.
Yeah, like it's high up there. So signature dining can mean a few different things. Usually people are looking at that for that character dining just because a lot of people go with kids. Okay, so now that we have a feel for the lingo, let's see where it gets ya.
So let's do a budget breakdown.
Yeah.
And what we wanted to do is kind of think of an average cost for the base trip for a family of 4.
Yeah.
So that's going to include a week at a value resort, 4 days of park tickets with 1 park per day, And then we're going to think about bringing snacks to the parks to cut down on getting meals. Really important. I don't know if we said this before, but one of the best things about Disney is that you can bring in food and drinks into the park. So then for a family of 4, the meals, the 4 meals at quick service is going to cost about $50. So 2 quick service meals, $100 a day on food for 4 park days, plus sandwiches on pool days. And then if you add in about $1,000 in transportation, which will wildly depend on where you live and how you plan to travel, of course, but we're going to say $1,000 is a good place to start. That'll bring you to $5,000.
Yeah, so that's like a good, if you're thinking like, where can I start? $5,000 is a good spot. But you can obviously adjust this. So if you're going as a couple, like Bruce and I have never spent $5,000 at a Disney trip. We're usually probably closer to about $3,000. If you have a family of 5, it's going to add at least $1,000 to that price, if not about $1,500, depending on what you're doing. And then same idea, if your kids eat adult meals, you'll need to double that $500 in food costs. So obviously this is just a place to start, and you'll have to make it your own.
Right. And one of those things, speaking of like adding 1 person, so going to 5 is about $1,000. The standard room is going to be like 2 queen beds.
Yes.
Something important to think about. Almost
Very important.
Pretty much all of the rooms at Disney are 2 queen beds.
Yes. So you also want to think about that if you do have older kids, are they going to want to share that 1 queen?
Yeah. Do you want everybody in the same room? Are you going to need a studio? And that's where prices can start to add up.
Absolutely, they do. All right, so let's talk about if you do want to splurge on a few things, or if you know you can cut down on transportation so you have a little more money in your budget to play. Let's see what you can do with it.
So let's think about resorts. We already kind of gave you the idea of the categories and the lingo that they use to describe them. But generally speaking, if we're going to a moderate resort, you're going to add about $150 to $200 a night. So that's based off of the value resort being around 150. Yeah, I'd say 150.
Like
you can see it. And again, this is a range, right?
Yeah.
And one thing I want to say is, when we think about these 3 categories, within each category, you're going to have kind of a tier within that
definitely.
category.
So like we pretty easily found a moderate resort this summer for $200 a night. So even though we're saying you need to add $150 a night, that would actually be very close to the same price as Art of Animation, which is also a value. So a lot of this is, it's not so cut and dry. We were trying to write this episode and we were like, oh my gosh, there's so much. So we're really trying to keep it simple today. But just keep in mind, the moderate is going to cost you, $100, $150 extra a night added on from the value price that we just gave you.
Right. And then if you think about deluxe, that's where things really start to get more expensive, especially if you're getting studio, or if you're going to get the club level, like we said before, you could be up towards the $700, $800 a night for a room.
Oh, easily. Like, absolutely can be $1,500 a night for a room.
Yeah, it just goes on up and up and up.
Yeah.
So why don't we move off accommodations and think, where can we splurge with park tickets?
So park tickets are a little trickier, but actually might be more bang for your buck. So each park day gets less expensive as you add more. So I ran some numbers today. And if you took a day in August, like a 6-day park ticket in August, it's $517 per person. A 7-day ticket is $531 per person. It's literally only $14 difference.
Right.
And you get a whole other park day. So adding park days is actually a really great way to get more out of your money.
Right.
So that would, stay cheaper, go to the parks more often if you're looking at a way to make your money work for you.
Yeah, and I mean, that's something to consider. If you really care just about being in the parks, then think about your accommodations. Look at the good neighbor hotels. You stay a little bit longer and spend more because you're actually not going to spend that much more on extra days.
Yeah, absolutely. Genie Plus is a new Fast Pass system. This could be an episode all on its own, but it's now going to cost you. So Fast Pass, just so you know, you're jumping to kind of the front of the line. It's a different line, much shorter, and it goes much quicker. It used to be free, and now it costs per person. It is dynamic pricing, so it's going to change depending on how busy the park is. But I would plan for $20 maybe in the summer. If you're in a busier time, $25, $30.
That's per ticket.
It's per person, per ticket, per day.
Yes.
So it can add up really quickly.
It can add up. I do think it can be worth it.
Oh, yeah. I think that we've always had it.
Yeah,
I don't know if I could do it without it at this
right,
point. It might be, for me, like a necessary splurge.
Right.
There is one other thing called individual lightning lane. Even though it sounds very much like the lightning lane from Genie Plus, it's completely different. So individual lightning lane is when you pay to ride one specific ride, and you're paying for that ride and however many people want to ride it. So you may be thinking that's crazy, but it's only one ride per park. And like, so for example, Hollywood Studios has Rise of the Resistance. That's a lot of people's like number one thing they want to do. So if you want to be guaranteed to ride that, obviously they can't guarantee it because it could shut down, but you'd get a refund. But if you want to give yourself the best chance to ride that, you can pay, the $15 per person to ride it.
I think it's worth it.
We did it in Disneyland Paris. I'm not knocking it at all.
Oh, no. I mean, honestly, again, it's where do you want to spend your money?
Right.
So it's an option. Like that time we went to Disneyland Paris.
Right.
And I think we just had like one day in the park.
Yep.
And we were trying to fit a lot of things in. But I really wanted to ride the Space Mountain, their version of it. Because it was like Star Wars. Yeah. Which was really awesome.
But it went upside down, which disqualifies me.
Shelly was like, I'm not doing this. I'm not waiting in line. And if I remember correctly, it was probably about $15.
Yeah, something like that.
But it was awesome. So I just paid for it. I got my time. And I went on. We did it within like 30 minutes. So totally worth it.
I mean, by the time your time came around, you did it in like 5. It was like you literally texted me and you were like, "Oh, I'm here.
Yes,
oh, I'm getting on."
From start to finish.
Yeah.
Which it was great.
Yeah.
So that's totally, a good option if you're looking at how can I splurge a little bit and expand my budget for when you're actually in the park.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
Well, our very last thing with tickets is going to be our park hoppers.
Yes.
So if you're going for less than 4 days, I always recommend a park hopper because you physically can't see all 4 parks. And I feel like if you're going to make the trip, you might as well be able to see all 4 of them. But I would always suggest at least 4 park days if you can swing it. And if it's a first time there, I would kind of suggest to go with the 1 park per day. But if you're going to be there for longer, say you're going to be there for the week, you're going to take advantage of that 7-day park, then I would probably go for park hoppers because you're going to find things that you love at each park.
Yeah, you may want to go back on a certain day, but truly if it's your first time and you're trying to be conscious of your budget, if you give yourself a full day to experience the park, I don't think, you're not going to be upset you did it.
No, absolutely not. And actually, my very favorite way to suggest this is to get 6 nights, 5 days, do 4 days of the park and 1 pool day in between. Because that's going to, especially with kids.
Oh, yeah. Especially if you have kids, because it's almost always hot in Orlando, and you're going to be on your feet a ton.
Yeah.
We clock like 25,000 steps at least when we're there.
Yeah.
All right, so we talked about how we can splurge on some park tickets. Let's talk about food.
Yeah, I mean, I can eat my way through Disney World, so it's easy to spend money there. We did already mention this, but you can bring your own food in the park, just no loose ice or dry ice. And we've done that plenty of times. It's totally not looked down upon or anything. You'll see people with full picnics in Disney World. So definitely an easy way to cut some cost. Bruce and I kind of assumed table service because your budget did include some quick service meals. So if we're going to add some table service, we assume our table service is going to cost us about $120 to $150 when we go. But we do also pretty much always have 2 drinks per person. Drinks at Disney are pretty expensive.
That adds up.
Yeah. Right? So if you're not a drinker, like you could, I mean, I don't know if you can cut it in half, but maybe almost. I mean, the Disney drinks they're probably about $13 a pop.
Yeah,
so it's an extra $30 each. So yeah, about half.
Definitely.
Yeah, but it's still a pretty expensive add-on.
Your entree, and if you get appetizer or dessert, you're going to be paying a good amount more than just getting quick service options.
Absolutely. And then of course, all the families want to know about character dining or our signature dining. They're the most expensive, of course. They're usually pre-fixed and either buffet or family style. Family style just meaning they bring it to your table, but it's all you care to eat. And they cost somewhere usually around $30 per child and $50-ish, $60-ish per adult, depending on which one you're at. As you can see, that will add up very quickly, especially if you have any types of drinks, because like I mentioned, they'll probably sit around $15 a pop.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that anytime you're getting these signature dining experiences and you see like, wow, $60 just to kind of sit down, even if I don't want to eat as much, you got to remember that you're pretty much reserving a seat for an experience.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Just don't get caught in the trap of one person comes and they say they don't want to eat and then they expect maybe they don't have to pay. Well, you got to pay for your seat.
Yeah. There's no, I'm not eating today.
Right, and I mean, a lot of that is because it's very popular.
Absolutely. It books up 60 days in advance. So we mentioned a lot about adding extra, but there's also ways to scale back on that $5,000.
Right, and one of those was, we did mention bringing food into the parks.
Yep.
That's probably one of the biggest ways. You don't need to spend a ton of money on sitting down to eat or doing signature dining.
There are tons of grocery delivery services in the area. They're very familiar with the Disney resorts.
And it's not hard to Uber around. Like, there's a lot of options out there. And, Shelly and I, especially if we have a car, we always like to go to Wawa.
It's a gas station, but we love it. We get coffee and breakfast sandwiches and rope dropping while we're waiting there, just to casually eat them.
Yeah, it's a cheaper way to get some breakfast. And, honestly, when I'm at the park, I don't find that I'm sitting down and eating 3 square meals.
No, it's hot. You're busy.
You're moving around.
Yeah.
Like, if anything, I'm drinking a lot more water.
Yeah.
And I don't want to eat something super heavy.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's one really good way is like bring an ice pack, bring a backpack, bring some sort of cooler that's easy to carry, and you can do a lot. Especially if you have kids, man, bring snacks.
Yes,
so you don't
bring
end
snacks.
up having,
that will kill you.
Bring snacks, bring some drinks. You'll be really happy about that.
Another thing to do is if you are far enough that you can't really drive to Disney, there's some ways to get kind of creative. We're up in New England, and I've had quite a few of my clients that have actually driven to Virginia and then taken the train.
The
train takes your car, so it's a really cool thing, and it actually ends up being cheaper than all 4 of them flying, and they have their car.
Yes.
And now at the Disney resorts, if you're staying on property, you don't pay to park, so it's kind of a win-win all together if you have your car, if you're able to take it.
Yeah,
so you can get creative.
And we know that, your transportation costs can be a huge part of the budget.
Yes.
So if you can find a way to make sense of it, and it all depends on where you're coming from, whether you're driving or you find like the train. So there's options.
But do consider that if you are, driving and you're trying to stay off property, definitely look at paying for parking. You do have to pay $25 to park at the parks, like at the resorts, Disney, like at Animal Kingdom, Magic Kingdom. And then their transportation's not always great. Disney's is very good. It has the buses, the monorail, the Skyliner,
yes.
all kinds of things. But not every good neighbor resort will necessarily have that great of transportation. So you definitely have to look at that.
All right, so I think we've given some ideas on how you can splurge and how you can cut back. Let's get into our last category where we're looking at some of our favorite extras and another tip. I don't know if we said this before about souvenirs, because that could be a big part of the budget. I know for Shelly and I, we don't spend a lot on souvenirs, but we have a pretty good tip for this.
Yeah. So these are the things that are big add-ons and kind of our opinions on them, whether they're worth it or not. So fireworks is the first one. There are fireworks nightly at Epcot and Magic Kingdom, and there's a show called Fantasmic at Hollywood Studios. So there's always nighttime entertainment in those 3 parks. The fireworks, especially in Magic Kingdom, can get wild. Like, I'm talking, arm to arm squished in with, 30,000 of your closest friends. And it can be overwhelming.
It definitely can be. And everybody kind of converges all together at once, and then they often leave the park together.
Yeah, so it can just be a lot. And if fireworks are a thing that you're very excited about, you've seen the YouTube videos and you just want that moment, we would actually recommend the firework dessert party. So that's going to be about $120 an adult and $70 a kid. So it is a little bit of a splurge, but it does come with like some snacks, some desserts. It's called a dessert party, and some beer and wine for anyone over 21. So it's just a good way to watch the fireworks without feeling squished, having your own spot. And
if that's a top on your list, definitely think about the money for this one. You'll be really happy you did.
Yeah. The next one, Bruce is going to take over.
All right, man. So this one, this is my favorite. At Galaxy's Edge in Hollywood Studios, you've got 2 really cool opportunities if you're a Star Wars fan, or if you didn't know you were a Star Wars fan and you want to become one, definitely check this out. So one of them is Sabi's Workshop, where you can build your own lightsaber. Mm-hmm. I think this is totally worth the money. And I'll tell you, I made my own lightsaber. The best part is you can bring someone in.
Yeah.
So I
got to go.
Yeah, and it's going to cost you, it's changed a little bit. It's
$250 right now.
$250 right now.
Plus taxes.
Plus tax. And that might be like, whoa, is that enough for a lightsaber? How often am I going to use it? But the experience is so cool. You can bring somebody with you. And I know that Shelly and I, when we book people for Disney, they often are like, that seems like a lot just to make a lightsaber. And then almost all of them the day of the park, they're like, please, can you find a way to get us a reservation for this? So,
and it's not the easiest to do the day of. So it
wanna,
really is like, if you want to do it, you got to just pull the trigger.
So another thing, if that's a little too expensive, but you still love Star Wars, there's also an opportunity to build your own droid, which is really fun. And they've got all the models of like R2-D2 or BB-8 and different ways to customize them. And that one's a little bit cheaper.
Yeah, I think that one is right around like 100, 120. It depends on how you build it as well.
There's add-ons. Yeah, you can get different, like, I'm pretty sure there's chips for the way they sound, kind of like their voices. And you could buy more than one. So yeah, you could definitely spend a little bit more money on that, or a little less depending on how you do that.
Yeah, so about 120 is what you're looking at for that.
Right. All right, so this next one, I'm going to let Shelly take it on. I love how she wrote this in the notes. Triple B.
Yeah.
What's Triple B?
Well, honestly, I'm not going to spell this out every time. But it is a Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique, which is kind of the princess makeover. There used to be 3 locations, but only one is open since COVID. So just the one at Magic Kingdom. And this is where they do little prince and princesses. I cannot even say that out of my mouth. But anyways, they do boys and girls. They'll do makeovers. And it's like mostly makeup. You can do hair. They pull it all back kind of in the same very tight bun style. And I just feel like it looks uncomfortable. So that's my biggest thing with it is it just...
I think what Shelly's saying is she would have went to be a pirate instead of a princess maybe when she was a toddler.
Which you can do.
Which you can also do. You can also do.
But I just feel like there's a Facebook page for furloughed cast members that kind of started during COVID. It's called Ear for Each Other. And they have a lot of these same kind of opportunities, but I actually think are cooler, don't tell Disney, than the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique experience, because they do cool things like hair extensions and colors.
Yeah, I think there's more variety.
Yeah, well, they're able to do it because Disney kind of has a standard for that, and you go for that one thing, and they get to kind of have a little more fun with it, in my opinion. And there are lots and lots of beauticians on that site. So if you're like thinking about it, you're not sure, check out that Facebook page, Ear for Each Other, and see if you find something maybe you like even more.
All right, so for this last tip, Shelly and I don't buy a lot of souvenirs, but if you're somebody that loves to get t-shirts or, ears, Mickey ears, or whatever it might be, we definitely think you should check out the Vineland Outlet. Has a store for Disney discount items. They're all official Disney merch, and so this place is, I want to say, about 15-minute drive outside of the parks, depending on what park you're coming from. It's not far. It's in Orlando, but it's an awesome place to go find.
It's called the Character Warehouse.
The Character Warehouse. There it is. Sorry, yes, I forgot to say the name, but it's in these an outlet with a bunch of other shops. So if you're taking a half day, to do some shopping, explore Orlando, or even at the start of your trip, if you're trying to get geared up, definitely check it out. There's things up to 50% off the cost.
Oh, I think it's sometimes 70% off. Yeah, it's crazy. And it's official Disney merchandise. This is not just someone selling them out of the back of their car. This is real Disney merchandise. I have seen ears, which you buy the ears at Disney. They're about $30 in the park, I think, at this point, and you can find them for $5, $7, $8. Not always, but they have sales where they have these crazy deals on things that you absolutely, or your kids are absolutely going to want to buy in the park. So definitely a place to check out, especially if you want to keep that budget low.
All right, I think that sums up our first Disney episode. Budget breakdown.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to do Disney. This hopefully gives you a good place to start in your head, kind of thinking about what would it look like and what could you do with it. Of course, there's almost unlimited things to add, things to subtract.
Yeah, it goes on. And there's so much that we could talk about with Disney. So, man, if you want to get in contact with us, just check out the show notes. Let us know. It would definitely help you out with that vacation.
And make sure to check out our show notes for that giveaway to win a year of Scotch cheap flights. And thank you so much for 1,000 downloads.
Thanks so much for listening, everybody. And we can't wait to bring you more content.
See you next time. Did you know that every time you book a Disney or Universal vacation, you're paying for a service that you may not even be using?
Really?
That's right. Travel agent costs are added to your Disney or Universal vacation, whether you use one or not.
So you're telling me that I'm paying for something even though I'm not getting the help?
You got it. So next time you want to book a theme park vacation, make your money work for you. By booking with Magic Pass Travel, you'll get our expertise and years of experience without paying any extra and while supporting a small business.
Check out our show notes to find our contact information.
Can't wait to help you plan your next adventure.